welcome. Welcome to this first LinkedIn Live of the Mindful AI Manifesto series, Andy. And thanks so much for accepting to be an ambassador for the Mindful AI Manifesto Germany in 2020, a few years ago.
Yeah,
and
it's a few years back.
Yeah, and thanks for having this conversation. So, for everyone watching us live or recording, the purpose today is really to have Andy on the spotlight. So, in shortly, I will read his formal bio just to give you a little bit of understanding on who Andy is and overview of his career, and then we'll engage in a conversation about his perspective of where we are at now with artificial intelligence and his general opinion of what is happening at the moment. Any additional words, Andy?
No, I just thought maybe for the people that are joining today, it's worth just recapping that this initiative you set up back in 2020 actually, and I think there's a website which explains a little bit about what you're doing. I think it's pretty clear from the name that we were trying to get the human into AI even back then, and I think we were talking a few years before that as well. So I think this is a conversation which is sort of started, and it's been going on actually for a long time, but has now become incredibly top of mind for most people this year.
Yeah, 100%. And for those who are watching and not aware, so if you go to, I'm not sure how to share the link, but if you go to mindfulaimanifesto.org, you find information about what the manifesto is all about. So for now, let me introduce Andy, and then we will engage in a conversation. Andy. So Andy is the founder and managing partner of Mobivise, a creative advisory based in Germany, and leads enterprise business for Rebel Dot, an European agency delivering software experiences powered by the latest advances in AI. He's also the founder of healthcare startup carecircle.org, which empowers users to take charge of their own health journey. Previously, Andy spent 29 years in Accenture and its joint venture with Microsoft, Avanade, where he was, amongst other things, a member of the Global Technology Council for Accenture and the Global Operating Committee for Avanade, General Manager of Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, and Head of Industry X at Accenture, and also the global leader in the applied intelligence practice. Deep breath.
I actually said a global leader. I was not the global lead of applied intelligence, just to be clear. But
okay, just one of them. Andy has also worked in 2 startups during the .com era as a CTO and led 5 acquisitions with Accenture and Avanade, and has a first-class degree in mathematics from Trinity College, University of Cambridge, and a master's degree in AI at UCL, where he graduated in first place and was awarded by the Peter Williams Prize by Professor Peter Kirsten, one of the founders of the internet, not less than. So Andy is a dual German-British citizen based in Frankfurt, Germany, and speaks and writes German, English, and French. Okay, so that's a little bit of an overview of Andy's background, where he has been, and what he's up to these days. So, and any additional thoughts in terms of your background, anything that you'd like to add before we have a conversation about the objectives of the manifesto?
Well, no, I would just simply say that I think, since I was in my sort of early to mid-teens, technology and computing has always been around, and many of the topics that we're talking about now actually started back before I was even born. I mean, we have to remember that the whole journey on computing goes back to actually before the Second World War, and people like Turing and Alonzo Church and von Neumann were names. I hadn't obviously heard of Turing because he was on the wraps until the 90s, but I mean, some of the greats that were involved in it were sort of very present throughout my childhood. I'd heard of these names, von Neumann in particular. And so it seems like it's a new topic, but it's actually a topic that's been sort of waiting in the wings. And you know, yeah, we did have computer games back in the 1980s as well, just to remind some people who were maybe a bit younger.
Thanks, Andy. Good point. I saw there's so much happening, but I saw on LinkedIn today a short video from the godfather of AI. I think it was an interview in the morning. I don't know if for you, maybe who
You
shared
mean
the morning news.
Jeffrey Hinton? You mean?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I think Max Tegmark shared that again. Yeah, it
Yes,
was a
that was
CBS
Max. Yeah.
interview.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
I mean
highly
he's
recommend. I reposted on the Mindful AI Manifesto page. Anyhow, back to you. So it's very, for everyone watching, it's very easy for me and Andy to get off track because, there are so many rabbit holes we could go into. So let's start with objectives that resonate the most with you. And so in the Mindful AI Manifesto website, the .org, that people can check later, we have a few initiatives that we talk about. And you mentioned that the one around getting AI professionals to come together to write the actual manifesto with our guidelines, best practices around ethics, while governance, it's not in place in many areas. Why do you think this is one of the objectives, the initiatives that you resonate the most with?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, I mean, as we're sort of seeing in the last, few weeks and days, even, there's this raging debate going on now about, are you an optimist or are you a pessimist? And that's wrong to classify people as one or the other. And the reality it is that I think a number of people were involved in responsible AI, starting. I guess after the sort of there were books out by Nick Bostrom in 2014, Superintelligence, and then Max Tegmark, and then a whole bunch of people came together in 2018, including some of the guys that you mentioned, like Stuart Russell, who I know you've been in dialogue with, and they simply said, we need a framework to manage what we are developing. It's kind of interesting because we started looking at that back in 2020. We were talking to the people you brought together, Nat, and I was also in touch with the people in Accenture around responsible AI. But this thing is moving so fast now that we still seem to lack a clear framework, and that's why this mail went out last week, or this signed letter. The Frontiers of Life message, which caused so much upset, but I think it was an important thing to do. And it's interesting that the community seems to have created a new term already, which is good, but also worrying that we're doing this on the fly. So everybody's now talking about alignment, which I find to be kind of a little bit of a misleading word. Actually, it's just a question of alignment. Alignment with human values, and I think that's what we were talking back then, Nat, and I think obviously lots of other people are aware of this, and it's I guess I would put it this way: it's like every time there's been a major invention, which is sort of basically creates a new paradigm for the economy or for society. There are always pluses and minuses. There are risks and opportunities, and you could take, for example, the internal combustion engine back in the late 19th century. Of course, it liberated people, and it's also allowed you to mechanize farming and ultimately create the aeromotive industry, aerospatial industry as well. But on the other side, we're dealing now with the consequences of climate change. Now, we won't have a 100-year head start on AI, I'm afraid. I think it's more like a 10 or 20-year head start to do this. And it could be, if you listen to, the Jeffrey Hinton interview, it could be as little as 5 years in which we have to respond.
Yeah. I remember we're talking about, even, sorry to drop, even back in 2020, we were talking about, we have 20 years at least, 2 decades, a couple of decades. And now actually some researchers talking about 5 years is nothing. If we need to put, governance and guidelines in place. Yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, you're spot on. And I think that's the scary thing, is that we're the kind of society responds sort of linearly. So if it always takes the same amount of time to get legislation in place or frameworks in place. I mean, we normally talk about 10 years. I mean, if a government comes in, they're lucky if they manage to get legislation through in 2 periods of office. So to do this on a global scale from where we are now, I think the EU put out its framework. It put out its first discussion paper on AI in 2021, but way away from sort of a global agreement in terms of how to do this. And I posted this morning on LinkedIn a paper which I had seen, but not many people seem to have seen, which was published, I think, in February. So it's only, you know, about 6 weeks old, by OpenAI, an OpenAI researcher and 2 academics from Berkeley and from Oxford, basically talking about the alignment problem, as they call it now. And it's a pretty scary read. I mean, you know, these are the people, you know, actually at the vanguard of this topic, and we're not talking about something which is sort of, you know, theoretical or, you know, might happen. I mean, there's serious risks here. So yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to jump in again, Andy, it's just for those watching and listening. The Mindful AI Manifesto, we acknowledge all the benefits of AI, and we are big champions, right? We've been, both of us worked in that space, you know, directly or indirectly. So the initiative that Andy resonated most, actually, that he mentioned, it's actually around this grassroots movement, which is about engaging and actually a multidisciplinary movement where we have not only the machine learning experts, the data scientists, the project managers, solution architects, people working hands-on in developing, testing, building, designing AI solutions, but anyone involved really that is interested in, because we talk about that in our website, that I think being a bit simplistic, I really see as 2 approaches. Number one, we wait for governance and policies in place, and there are some people doing fantastic work like Merv Hickok from the Center for AI and Digital Policy, doing amazing work, having impact in Congress and so on. But all of this takes time, and countries will have their differences as well. So while all of that is happening, those governance guidelines, models are being built and discussed and approved. Something I believe needs to be done in the coal face, you know, a grassroots movement where people are more aware. So I think the key message of the manifesto and one of our initiatives is really around raising awareness, not only of people working in the AI space, because many, I think, of us are aware already about what's happening, but also people who are, you know, in the masses, the lay people who don't have much exposure to and understanding of actually what's happening. So we want to not just highlight the risks, because I think there are enough people talking about risks, but also champion awareness, because I think through awareness, general public will have more of a say to influence legislation, governance, and all of that. Does that make sense, Andy? I'm just feel like I'm just rambling.
Yeah, no, it's totally right. I mean, I first of all, I think it's imperative that it is multidisciplinary, because I think there's a big difference between if you're working in it sort of, you know, in implementing a large model, for example, you're not necessarily doing fundamental research. A lot of the work is around scaling and implementing. And you know, it's a bit like with, you know, the nuclear revolution. I mean, you know, not everybody's Einstein or Niels Bohr thinking about what this means. Most people are actually applying it, hopefully for beneficial purposes. I mean, I spend all my time looking at how to implement AI for companies. So it's always a beneficial thing. And of course, we're not implementing AGI solutions at the moment. But people want to know, but even without that, as you know, as Gary Marcus wrote in his Substack last week, it doesn't have to be sort of, you know, existential AI AGI threats. It's more about good corporate governance. How do you put that into how does this align with what you're doing as a company already? Most companies, in fact, pretty much every company has a set of policies, whatever industry they're in. I mean, if you work in the medical industry and you want to introduce AI into your solution, these are black box solutions. Yeah. So So you really need to think about how do we have sort of traceability? How does this relate to our existing approval guidelines? So I think working on the kind of responsible AI, that topic is basically an enabler for people to go and use this in a way. I think you use the Stuart Russell term beneficial, which is I think is the right way to talk about it. How can we make it beneficial for humans, for society, and I think everybody has an opinion on that. Actually, mainly because of this, we don't know how the human brain works, right? So each of us has probably. I mean, you're a psychologist, aren't you, Nat?
I teach positive psychology. I was actually want to talk about it shortly, but after your point.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you probably. I mean, actually, one of the guys I respect most in the community at the moment. I'm just a voyeur of the proper people, the proper academics. Is a guy called Gary Marcus at NYU, and he's a psychologist and sort of a neural scientist. I mean, he understands the human mind for sure better than somebody working on developing systems. So I think you need that understanding in order to make this beneficial for humans, right? So.
Which kind of leads to the second question that we had in your page in our website, Andy. What mindful AI means to you? And your answer was putting the human into the application of artificial intelligence. And if I may comment real quick, what's coming to my mind now as we're talking, it's one of the, can't remember, really should know by heart, but one of the key points for us is really to bring human values into AI. And in the same way that we're teaching, through algorithms, machine learning, we are teaching algorithms to learn X, Y, Z. We can teach human values, And University of Pennsylvania, with the work from Martin Seligman, who is the godfather of positive psychology, he identified 24 traits that are valued across humanity, across all cultures, across all times. Things like, forgiveness, kindness, compassion, and so on. So that's just me thinking out aloud, but why can't we decode those traits and actually teach, through machine learning, teach algorithms and AI to embed? That's just one random idea on how to embed human values into AI. But over to you. So what mindful AI means to you? So your answer again was putting the human into the application of AI. So what comes to mind when you think of that statement?
I think it's now what the industry is just decided is called alignment. I mean, it may be that term was coined before, but it seems to have suddenly appeared in the last couple of months, and everybody's talking about alignment today rather rapidly. But essentially, what does that mean? It means exactly what you said, which is what are human values, and how do we align the goals of future AI systems. And by the way, it's worth pointing out that the number of parameters in the models that we don't know how big GPT-4 is, which is the thing which upsets a lot of people at the moment. But we're approaching the number of synapses we have in the human brain. So we're capturing things on a scale which it's quite hard to imagine, because people just say, well, it's like an advanced calculator. But scale really does make a difference here, and the way these models are built, they can capture really advanced concepts. And so the question is how do you build human values into this? So you always have this sort of idea of the ultimate purpose of any machine. Nick Bostrom talks a lot about this in Superintelligence. So, and I don't think there's anything that has changed in the 8 years since he wrote the book. It's still an open question. So how do you detect what the interim goals of the machine are? How do you align that, back to the word alignment, with what we would like as human beings? And I think it's really important. It's quite hard for us philosophically to get our minds around this, but we assume that everything that we do as humans that we value is innate to the universe. But it's not. The things that we consider to be good, as Richard Dawkins wrote in The Selfish Gene back in the 70s, it's very related to our evolution. So it doesn't happen. It doesn't have to happen automatically. These things happen because they're useful for us as biological creatures that have evolved. And so if we're going to build systems which become, really very, very sophisticated and maybe even partially sentient, maybe fully sentient ultimately, I mean, then we need to approach that. I don't have an answer to that today. There isn't any. I mean, I'm not there at that research level, but I think creating awareness to people that they need to create solutions which are aligned with human values is at least a first start. But it's the big problem for the industry now.
Yep. Okay. As a time in Etsy, I'm looking at we have 9 minutes left, Andy, but I think we covered, some decent ground. So maybe a key message that I have before we close. Well, I have one more question, which is why do you think the Mindful AI movement is important, and which means that why have you accepted to be involved in this initiative? But before you answer the question, just going to give you some time to think about. I wanted to say next, for those watching us live or in recording, next we really intend to continue this conversation. So potentially having a chat with all the ambassadors of the Mindful AI Manifesto, as well, and me and Andy probably doing some book reviews of some of the books that Andy mentioned today, like Life 3.0 from Mark Stegmark, Human Compatible from Stuart Russell, and what's the one from Kathy Maths of Math Destruction, Weapons of Math Destruction. That one I actually haven't read yet, so I have to read before we do a book review. But that's something that we have in mind, and I would love to hear from you if anyone have any suggestion on topics that you like us to discuss here. And also there is a call for action to register for the Mindful AI Manifesto in our website. But before we close, we still have 8 minutes. So Andy, maybe some final words, and why do you think the Mindful AI Manifesto it's important, and why have you accepted to be involved in this initiative?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I got sort of, like many people, got kind of connected with the topic of AI, which had been in a bit of a winter, or I don't know if it was his second or third winter officially, but I got re-engaged with the topic in 2016, 17. New books were coming out, and that was partly because of deep learning had got to the point where I think initially with convolutional neural networks, the image recognition problem essentially was solved, right? And that was quite an amazing thing that we experienced. I mean, it's only so many years back, 2017. Then Google published its famous paper on attention and sort of the transformer, which is basically the building block behind GPT, the GPT series, and other large language models. And then suddenly we all noticed that, hey, translation got really good, and something was happening. And then I think Bill Gates coming out, I think it was about 10 days ago, this is happening so fast, coming out and saying, on his Gates note as well as on a video cast, which you can all find on YouTube if you haven't watched it, that this is the age of AI has begun. It's a very significant moment, and I don't know if it was Stuart Russell or Nick Bostrom, but AI is the world's last invention, because ultimately, as we can see already, generative technology and recursively improving technology eventually becomes the sort of the last invention. So I'm not, I don't want to be a doom monger, because this can transform people's lives, but it's also something. It's a bit like Goethe's Sorcerer's Apprentice. We've been given this book of spells, but we're the apprentice. We go into that lab and say the possibilities, the things that we can do are immense. But we also need to understand that this is something which has immense power, and it's one of those. I mean, actually, Geoffrey Hinton. In case people don't know who Geoffrey Hinton is, he's one of the three so-called godfathers that won the Turing Prize in 2018. So he's one of the fathers of deep learning. And these are incredibly deep people like Yoshua Bengio and Jan LeCun. I mean, they really, they spent the last 30 years or maybe more really coming at this problem. And you know, Geoffrey Hinton sort of said, yeah, this is on the scale of the invention of electricity, or maybe the wheel.
The wheel, yeah.
He even said it, and it's like, this is Geoffrey Hinton. He's not a kind of a marketing guy. This is a deep, very deep learning sort of, you know, deep in philosophical individual, and he's using, you know, almost hyperbole, like, yeah.
Dramatic.
So we're at the moment. This is a very important moment in human development, and so of course, you know, you picked up this topic, and I think we were engaged in a thread which had with Stuart Russell actually on LinkedIn, which is amazing that he actually talks to mere mortals like us. Well, like me anyway. But and then I think then we realized, okay, something's happening, and it is happening now, and so I think it affects us all, and so I can say I can't answer all the technical questions on how to solve the alignment problem, because it's going to require the collective wisdom of, you know, the research community to look at that. But the most important thing is that we know what we don't know, and that we start to be aware, and actually we need multi-disciplines, because this is not going to be solved by people just scaling models. I mean, they're not thinking about the fundamental theoretical underpinnings of this and what it means to be human, or what the, you know, what a super intelligent agent would do. I think they're very much involved in building, and that's not enough actually. So yeah, that's it.
Cool. Okay.
The start gun has been basically fired, and we're into the age of AI, the true age of AI now.
Yeah. No, thank you. One more thing that I want to share about Andy, it's he wrote. I remember when I read his article about AGI. It took me a while to digest, but highly recommend. I hope I will figure out how to add notes to the recording so people actually can have a reference to the things that we are mentioning. But
oh, you mean my article on consciousness? Yeah.
Go follow Andy Smith. Check his articles. You'll find there an article about consciousness and AGI. Yeah, very highly recommend. Okay, so just over 1 minute to go. I think the final comments I wanted to make is just really, you know, have a look at our website, mindfulaimanifesto.org. Register if you feel that the message resonates with you, and follow our page as well, so you are in the loop for future conversations between me and Andy and all the ambassadors as well. Andy, final thoughts, final words before we log off?
No, I mean, it's funny, Nat, just before because we were prepping this up, and we said, you know, what do we want out of this? And we wanted just to connect with people. I mean, we don't have all the answers, but we're trying to build a community. So as Nat said, if you want to reach out, you know, register so that we can be, and if you want to be involved in any way, then please reach out to us. And yeah, that's it basically. So let's do this.
And feel free to connect with us if you're not yet a first connection. Yeah, happy to connect and have a chat offline as well. Amazing. Thanks, Andy. High five. Hopefully this worked and we are truly live. Okay, so see you soon. Bye for now. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.